Yo, welcome back guys. I hope you're all enjoying the new season. In this video, we're going to be watching some of the first high-level scrims and seeing what we can learn from the new meta. Firstly, one of the biggest changes I want to address is obviously this new map is a lot smaller. Although we've dropped down to 80 players, there's still not a lot of POIs, and I've seen a lot of people complain about the amount of chests as well. Another thing I've noticed is there's just not a lot of areas to loot outside the POIs. You can see there's not sort of like, say this area, there's only a few chests, and only some of them are guaranteed, and that's basically forcing, as you can see on the map in this scrim, a lot of people are just going to the POIs instead. So it's very important that you sort of get good off spawn in the season. Just quickly, you can win off spawn by having better drops than your opponent, like this guy, by having a drop map and understanding the glider mechanics. If you're not going to kill them off spawn immediately, this paired with something like a loot path will mean you gain the loot advantage by getting better loot over your opponent, and then you can go on to get things like high ground or a beam, and off spawn is all about finding these quick advantages. Immediately, the power plant seems a really good drop to me, because if you haven't noticed yourself, you've probably already seen the pros complaining that there's barely any metal in the map. So it's really important now you sort of get your metal off spawn, and obviously nuclear power plant is exactly like Steamy. It's got loads of metal, so it's a really good sort of off spawn option. But also you have got the power plants, and you basically have the glider mechanics still, and with these you can basically glide all the way sort of center zone, so you never have a bad zone landing at this POI. If you guys didn't know already, there's also a secret game at this drop spot where it gives you really good loot like the slurps, but by looking at this, I'm going to assume most of you still think it's random. I think Ozzy said try loads of random combinations in an earlier video. That's not the case. You basically have to find these posters around the POI, and that will tell you which order you need to do it in. So I've seen a lot of people get confused on what these boxes are, and they're basically just legendary chests, so they have replaced the blue ones, and they still give out a epic or legendary weapon, and good chance of some good heals like a 2% chug jug or the new fish rotation, and some chugs there as well. But they also, the best thing about them is there's a 100% chance they give 26 gold bars, which is going to be very useful for buying things like slurps at the shops. You guys have probably already noticed, but there's a new break-in animation where it's basically really hard to see. I'm hoping Epic do basically patch this in the next update, but in case they don't, just be very careful when box fighting, because your visibility is going to be massively reduced. Although the map's very small, there's actually a lot of sort of natural rotation points around the map, sort of like the old geysers. If you could see this tire place here, you can basically use it as sort of like a natural glider redeploy to get around the map quick. So as you can see in this scrim, no one's taken the mythic helmet. Is that a mistake, or are they right and it's just not worth carrying? In my opinion, so far it's not worth it, because unlike the medallions, it does take up an inventory slot, and it's just not worth it, in my opinion. The map's small, you're going to take a lot of damage, so you'll need them extra heals, so that slot's going to be sort of invaluable. Obviously, you saw a lot in previous seasons, the pros would drop the medallions because they would basically be tracked on the map, and this obviously shows your location on the map. Once your sort of helmet is shot once, it obviously then falls off. That's going to be, obviously, in sort of like end games, that's going to be hard to pick back up. Obviously in a box fight it could be quite good, blocking sort of like a 200 pump, but then if you get tagged in the head on rotate just by an AR shot, is it going to be that valuable? I don't think so. So if you guys didn't know already, there's basically 3 bosses in the game. There's Witch Marge, which gives you the mythic P90, Evil Homer, which gives you the mythic tack, and then Krusty, that gives you sort of his exotic balloon rifle. And 1 spawns per zone, so one boss will spawn in the first zone, second in the second, and third, etc. And they just pop up in your map when you're sort of like close to them. So are they worth fighting for? I think if they're free, then yes, but obviously a lot of times like this, there's going to be people fighting for it as well, so I don't think it's worth it in that case. Obviously, in stat games, like here, is the Mythic P90 going to be worth it when you probably need surge tags? I would say no. Is the Mythic Tack worth carrying when you've got the big hard hit and thunder shotgun? I don't think so. So whilst we're on the subjects of loadouts, let's talk about what you should be carrying in this new season, not only in ranked, but also in cups. Obviously, the first one is quite obvious, but I would go with the thunder pump as your shotgun. It actually actually does more damage and headshot damage than the Sentinel, but the main thing people are going to notice is the structure damage. Obviously, the Sentinels in a legendary rarity were going up to 90 structure damage, but now that's reduced to sort of like the 50s and 60s. So you're not going to be able to take builds as much, and you're going to have to start using your pickaxe more. If you get the tack, you see quite a big jump in structure damage. In the epic rarity, it jumps up sort of 20. So this is more like the Sentinel range. So this is actually going to be way better for box fighting, but then the counterpart is it barely does any damage. As you can see, the legendary doesn't even do 100 body shot. I think if you were to be keying, then definitely you could take sort of like an SMG, because this is going to thrive in box fights. I think both of these can potentially bleed through builds, especially on them higher ping players. The only thing is you're not going to have that sort of longer range. Both of these suck at long range, so you're not going to have that longer range to sort of get the beam to initiate the fight, but maybe you can sort of counter that with just sort of like dashing on people's heads. My personal recommendation would just be the Striker AR and Thunder Pump, and as you can see, a lot of people in scrims are carrying exactly that, so about 4 players there. I think a lot of people are carrying the silenced AR as well. If they find it in higher rarities, then as Striker they carry that instead. And then as you can see, they play 2 other heals and then the 0 dashes. If you pair the slushy with the new 0-point fish, as you can see, you're going to be able to gain a massive distance but also not take full damage. With the 0-point fish, you do take full damage, but the slushy effect cancels this. So as you can see, you could cover a large area in mid game, and especially sort of in the end game too on their max distance rotates. But for the rotates where you kind of have to just split them up and box up for a sec, obviously it is going to be worse because you're going to basically lose the effect by the time you go again. Why is this guy fishing in a 7th zone stack scrim? Well, it's because in the new season, there's actually a 25% chance that a blinky fish will spawn in a non-fishing spot, and for a fishing spot there's still an 18% chance, so there's very good chance that you can get rotation for the end game. The only problem with this is fishing is very right side orientated. As you can see that the fishing rods only spawn on the sort of mid right side of the map. Again, the power plant is really strong drop spot because it's got a lot of options around it. So what people are doing, if you remember a few seasons back when the sort of open water shieldfish was buffed, a lot of people would just carry in fishing rods, and they're doing the same again now. What they would do is they take a fishing rod down here, they get their 0 fish and basically rotate with them, and once they need some more, say they use them all to get to sort of center zone, they would just fish in this lake. As you can see, the water goes all the way around, so there's a lot of options to get it in the latter game. So they would just fish again with their fishing rods and again rotate for the next zone, and then they would end up basing up again, and you've basically got an unlimited source of rotation. The issue is there's only a 3 stack, so it's kind of a good method to counter this. I think this is a really good thing because it takes a lot of the RNG out of like last season when you basically couldn't find a fizz, therefore you had no rotation for the end game. On these smaller zones, he actually opts to the slurp instead. I think this is very smart because obviously the slurp is just better in these smaller zones, because if he was to use a dash here, as you can see, like, where is he going to dash into? He's basically already front side. He's basically going to dash into storm and then take storm damage and be in a sort of rough position. But if he's using the slurp, he can just make these sort of small sort of fizz rotates. And as you can see, by doing this, he actually gets a nice refresh too. So we're now going to watch the guy that ends up winning this game. And as you can see, his loot is absolutely stacked. He's got the exotic clown launcher as well as the mythic tack. But now we're about to see why the clown launcher is so good. Obviously, with the dashes, you can't really go up, so we've got no rotation that's sort of like good for taking height. But this clown launcher is the one exception, so just watch what he does here. He shoots a balloon, basically gets it on himself. So if you guys didn't know, the first shot on every round is basically the balloon effect. So if you do it on yourself, you can also get this. And then he basically shoots it again, goes all the way up past height. And then Hai actually shoots him there, and he just shoots him off. And then, as you can see, he goes all the way down. And now he's basically got high ground. Although he's a bit low and got shot in the air, he's now basically got it for free, especially if he builds a lot in these hard mats like Metal. Not only that, but once you have height, it's an amazing weapon to shoot down with because it basically griefs opponents massively. Look at this guy, low ground. He has no builds. And when he's trying to run around, he gets ballooned and he's literally just going up in the air and he can do nothing and dies. It's now the final 1v1, and although our player down here has no mats, he's still able to win the game because look what happens. This guy drops down, about to kill him, but then gets ballooned and then pumped. I hope you guys were able to learn loads of the new meta in this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, as I've got way more content like this coming. And if you're still craving that extra bit of improvement, then make sure to watch this video as it's very helpful.